Hello, all you beautiful people out there, and welcome to my channel. I hope that you're doing good today. And if you stop by to see what I'm about, thank you very much. I appreciate it. If you're one of my subs, I thank you for that too. Just a minute. Sorry. I hope you don't mind. I'm not going to do today in history. Um, But I am going to do comment of the week, rather. Sorry about that. Comment of the week. Um, and this week's comment of the week goes to Benjamin Fausen. My apologies if I got your last name a little bit mispronounced. He says, "You don't even understand what religions are." So I posted an example in the comment below explaining what religions are. I don't expect to get a heart, but that's okay. um, well, Benjamin, thank you very much for your comment. Um, but what I don't understand is I don't see another comment from you on this video. So if you would be kind enough to give an example. However, I do want to point out that examples are not definitions, okay? And also, the definition of religion changes. It changes with the field you're working on and even the subfield you're working on. The definition of a religion in anthropology will be a bit different than the definition of a religion in psychology. And the definition of religion in psychology is going to be at least a little bit different from the definition of a religion in neuroscience, because neuroscience is a subfield of psychology. So, um, don't give me an example because examples really don't work. Okay? Trying to be as nice as I can here. Examples really don't work. What does work are definitions. And that's what I run off of. And I generally try to make the definition of religion that I am. Just a minute. Sorry about that. Um, so anyway, so examples aren't really that useful. I mean, sure, they're useful for like people who don't study religions and don't study the psychology of religion and the anthropology of religion and the archaeology of religion. Examples are kind of going to be useful for them, even though, even then, I would say you really need a definition. But yeah, so you really need a definition, dude. I'm not trying to pitch down, okay? Trying to explain this to you. And yes, I do know what religions are because I've studied this. Okay? All right. Now, let's move on. Like I said, I don't want to do a, hope you don't mind me not doing a today in history. So let's just go on to what this is about. Hello, whoever's here. And today's passage is Joshua 7 through 11. And generally it's about the spies, but we'll get to that. But the Israelites were unfaithful in regard to the devoted things. Achan, son of Carmi, the son of Zimri, the son of Zerah, of the tribe of Judah, took some of them. So the Lord's anger burned against Israel. So I've got a question. Why does God make the entirety of Israel responsible for one man's ignoring his command against the holy things? It doesn't make sense to me. I mean, if you're mad at one person, don't take it out on a whole nation. You need to, you know, take it out on that one person, okay? Hey, Randolph, take it out on that one person. Don't take it out on the entire nation, okay? I'm just saying. Yeah, I agree, Nevermore. God does need therapy for his anger issues, if he existed, but anyway. Verse 2. Now Joshua sent men from Jericho to Ai, which is near Beth Aven, to the east of Bethel, and told them, go up and spy out the region. So the men went up and spied out Ai. By the way, am I the only one getting deja vu? Seriously, because this sounds exactly like what happened when they were on the other side of the Jordan, you know. So I'm getting a little deja vu here. I mean, can they not come up with a better story since, all of this is made up anyway? Verse 3. When they returned to Joshua, they said, not all the army will have to go up against Ai. Send 2,000 or 3,000 men to take it, and do not weary the whole army, for only a few people live there. So about 3,000 went up, but they were routed by the men of Ai, who killed about 36 of them. They chased the Israelites from the city gate as far as the stone quarries and struck them down on the slopes. At this, the hearts of the people melted in fear and became like water. Then Joshua tore his clothes and fell face down to the ground before the ark of the Lord, remaining there till evening. The elders of Israel did the same and sprinkled dust on their heads. And Joshua said, alas, sovereign Lord, why did you ever bring this people across the Jordan to deliver us into the hands of the Amorites to destroy us? If only we had been content to stay on the other side of the Jordan. Pardon your servant, Lord. What can I say now that Israel has been routed by its enemies? The Canaanites and the other people of the country will hear about this, and they will surround us and wipe out our name from the earth. What then will you do for your own great name? Sucking God dick as usual. Sorry, godless engineer. Catchy phrase. Verse 10. The Lord said to Joshua, stand up. What are you doing down on your face? Israel has sinned. No, one man sinned, not the entirety of Israel. So why did 36 men lose their lives just because one man sinned? Does that make any sense at all? Verse 11, Israel has sinned. They have violated my covenant, which I commanded them to keep. They have taken some of the devoted things. No, they didn't. One man did. They have stolen. They have lied. They have put them with their own possessions. Do I really need to say this again? That is why the Israelites cannot stand against their enemies. They turn their backs and run because they have been made liable to destruction. Why? Why not just punish that one dude? I will not be with you anymore unless you destroy whatever among you is devoted to destruction. I promised someone I wasn't going to call God and okay, so I'm not going to do that. Let's go on. I want to. Believe me, I want to. But I'm not going to do that because I did promise and I keep my promises. Verse 13, go consecrate the people. Tell them, consecrate yourselves in preparation for tomorrow. For this is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. There are devoted things among you, Israel. You cannot stand against your enemies until you remove them. Okay. All right. That would make sense. Kind of. Sort of. I don't know. I mean, that sounds a bit out of proportion to what happened, but um moving on. Verse 14. In the morning, present yourselves tribe by tribe. The tribe the Lord chooses shall come forward clan by clan. The clan the Lord chooses shall come forward family by family. So apparently this is going to be taken all day. Just want to throw that out there. This is going to take all day. And the family the Lord chooses shall come forward man by man. Whoever is caught with the devoted things shall be destroyed by fire, along with all that belongs to him. He has violated the covenant of the Lord and has done an outrageous thing in Israel. Verse 16. Early the next morning, Joshua had Israel come forward by tribes, and Judah was chosen. The clans of Judah came forward, and the Zerahites were chosen. He had the clan of the Zerahites come forward by families, and Zimri was chosen. Joshua and his family came forward man by man, and Achan, son of Carmi, the son of Zimri, the son of Zerah, of the tribe of Judah, was chosen. Then Joshua said to Achan, my son, wow, you're going to kill this dude. and you have the audacity to call him your son. Then Joshua said to Achan, my son, give glory to the Lord, the God of Israel, and honor him. Tell me what you have done. Do not hide it from me. Verse 20. Achan replied, it is true, I have sinned against the Lord, the God of Israel. This is what I have done. When I saw in the plunder a beautiful robe from Babylonia, 200 shekels of silver, and a bar of gold weighing 50 shekels, I coveted them and took them. They are hidden in the ground inside my tent with the silver underneath. Okay, just want to pause there. All right. So, first of all, you've got God punishing all of Israel because of one man, which doesn't make any sense at all. Okay, then you have this bizarre um, thing about they got to come tribe by tribe and clan by clan and family by family and man by man, blah, 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 blah. If God knows who did this to begin with, why not just say it? Why not all this? Why all this rigmarole? Why go through this pony show? You know, I mean, seriously, doesn't make any sense. Um, and also want to point out, Babylonia did not exist at this time. At the time this is purported to have been written, did not exist. Got to point that out. Verse 22. So Joshua sent messengers, and they ran to the tent, and there it was, hidden in his tent with the silver underneath. They took the things from the tent, brought them to Joshua and all the Israelites, and spread them out before the Lord. Excuse me. Then Joshua, together with all Israel, took Achan, son of Zerah, the silver, the robe, the gold bar, his sons and daughters, his cattle, donkeys, and sheep, his tent, and all he had, to the valley of Achor. Joshua said, why have you brought this trouble on us? The Lord will bring trouble on you today. Then all Israel stoned him, and after they had stoned the rest, they burned them. Over Achan they heaped a large pile of rocks, which remains to this day. Then the Lord turned from his fierce anger. Therefore, that place has been called the Valley of Achor ever since. Okay, that's the end of the chapter, but I want to go through this step by step. Achan is the one who took the stuff. What did his. Hang on. First of all, he confessed. We today are more moral than this God because even we have mercy on people who confess. Okay? People who confess, even in the United States, people who confess usually do not get the death penalty. Usually. I have heard of one or two exceptions, but, you know, that's neither here nor there. Okay? And certainly not for something as dumb as this. All right. And they burned them. Okay. They're talking about burning the possessions, which is fine. I mean, I don't really care. I mean, if they want to burn the possessions, burn the possessions. That doesn't really bother me. Over Achan, they heaped a large pile of rocks, which remains to this day. It's funny that they don't tell us where the pile of rocks are. That'd be very interesting to know, God. Then the Lord turned his fierce anger. Therefore, that place has been called the Valley of Achor. Okay, so another thing is they stoned the rest. They stoned everybody that was in Achan's household. What did they do? And more importantly, what did the animals do? I mean, again, I have no problem with burning his stuff if you want to burn his stuff. That's fine. That's fine. Possessions are possessions. Who gives a shit? The problem I have is you're punishing people who don't even deserve punishment. These people had no idea what Achan did. Okay? Even if you wanted to stone Achan, which shouldn't be there. I mean, seriously, come on. It's not like he killed anybody. Okay? Um, that's I don't agree with that, but it's one thing if you want to punish the person that's done this. It's something totally, entirely different when you want to kill everybody in the family. Now, I want to share something with you. This sounds a lot like North Korea. Hi, Just Noah. Thank you for coming by again. Okay. Okay. Thank you for letting me know that. Okay. Um, Chapter 8. Then the Lord said to Joshua, do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. Take the whole army with you and go up and attack Ai. For I have delivered into your hands the king of Ai, his people, his city, and his land. You shall do to Ai and its king as you did to Jericho and its king, except that you may carry off their plunder and livestock for yourselves. Set an ambush behind the city. Okay, um so I don't understand this. Achan and his family were stoned because they took plunder. But obviously, God doesn't have a problem with that because God's saying in like the next few verses, you can go ahead and take the plunder. So I'm not exactly. Why does God have a problem with the plunder from one city, but not the plunder from another city? That doesn't make sense to me. Um, okay. Uh, Verse 3. So Joshua and the whole army moved out to attack Ai. By the way, I don't know what um I assume that Ai is Canaanite, but that's just an assumption because most of these places were Canaanite and the time this was supposedly written. So I assume that Ai was a Canaanite city, but like I said, I don't know. It's a reasonable assumption because most cities in the era this was purported to have been written was um, Canaanite. Verse 3. So Joshua and the whole army moved out to attack Ai. He chose 30,000 of his best fighting men and sent them out at night with these orders. Listen carefully. You are to set an ambush behind the city. Don't go very far from it. All of you must be on the alert. I and all those with me will advance on the city, and when the men come out against us, as they did before, we will flee from them. They will pursue us until we have lured them away from the city. For they will say, they are running away from us as they did before. So when we flee from them, you are to rise up from ambush and take the city. The Lord your God will give it into your hand. When you have taken the city, set it on fire. Do what the Lord has commanded. See to it. You have my orders. I'm not even sure. That makes sense, Noah. That makes sense. Okay, so I'm not quite sure if archaeologists have found what they suppose to be AI. Not sure about that. Um, the archaeology of the Levant is kind of uh, there's a lot to go through in the Levant because it goes back a long way. Um, verse 9. Then Joshua sent them off, and they went to the place of ambush and lay in wait between Bethel and Ai, to the west of Ai. But Joshua spent that night with the people. Early the next morning, Joshua mustered his army, and he and the leaders of Israel marched before them to Ai. The entire force that was with him marched up and approached the city and arrived in front of it. They set up camp north of Ai, with the valley between them and the city. Joshua had taken about 5,000 men and set them in ambush between Bethel and Ai, to the west of the city. So the soldiers took up their positions with the main camp to the north of the city and the ambush to the west of it. That night Joshua went into the valley. Um, I'm assuming this means something to the people in the Levant. Never been there. Um, let's see. Hang on, I lost my place. Okay, verse 14. When the king of Ai saw this, he and all the men of the city hurried out early in the morning to meet Israel in battle at a certain place overlooking the Arabah. But he did not know that an ambush had been set against him behind the city. Joshua and all Israel let themselves be driven back before them, and they fled toward the wilderness. All the men of Ai were called to pursue them, and they pursued Joshua and were lured away from the city. Not a man remained in Ai or Bethel who did not go after Israel. They left the city open and went in pursuit of Israel. And my apologies if I am mispronouncing Bethel. Verse 18. Then the Lord said to Joshua, hold out toward Ai the javelin that is in your hand, for into your hand I will deliver the city. So Joshua held out toward the city the javelin that was in his hand. I'm not so sure they had I'm not so sure they had javelins during this time it was purported to have been written, but again, weaponry's not my area, so I don't know. Um, but just keep that in mind. They may have had swords. Not so sure about a javelin. Um, okay. Then the Lord said to Joshua, hold out toward Ai the javelin that is in your hand, for into your hand I will deliver the city. Okay. So I want to stop here because we've got Noah here, and I want to ask him, um, Noah, what is the word used in the Hebrew for javelin? Is it is it like is it is it translated properly? Because I know some things can get lost in translation. Verse 19. As soon as he did this, the men in the ambush rose quickly from their position and rushed forward. They entered the city and captured it and quickly set it on fire. The men of Ai looked back and saw the smoke of the city rising up into the sky, but they had no chance to escape in any direction. The Israelites who had been fleeing toward the wilderness had turned back against their pursuers. For when Joshua and all Israel saw that the ambush had taken the city and that smoke was going up from it, they turned around and attacked the men of Ai. Those in the ambush also came out of the city against them, so that they were caught in the middle with Israelites on both sides. Israel cut them down, leaving them neither survivors nor fugitives, but they took the king of Ai alive and brought him to Joshua. Thank you, Randolph. And thank you, Noah. No, it's fine. You're fine, Noah. Verse 24. When Israel had finished killing all the men of Ai in the fields and in the wilderness where they had chased them, and when every one of them had been put to the sword, all the Israelites returned to Ai and killed those who were in it. 12,000 men and women fell that day, all the people of Ai. For Joshua did not draw back the hand that held out his javelin until he had destroyed all who lived in Ai. But Israel did carry off for themselves the livestock and plunder of this city as the Lord had instructed Joshua. So Joshua burned Ai and made it a permanent heap of ruins, a desolate place to this day. He impaled the body of the king of Ai on a pole and left it there until evening. At sunset, Joshua ordered them to take the body from the pole and throw it down at the entrance of the city gate. And they raised a large pile of rocks over it, which remains to this day. I'm I'm assuming I'm assuming, and this is just my assumption, that when they're saying a pile of rocks, they're meaning some sort of an altar. That's just my assumption because some altars are made of rocks. I don't know whether any Israelite altars are made of rocks, but there are altars made of rocks. So I don't know whether pile of rocks means altar or just, it would make sense if the pile of rocks was an altar, because if that would be an altar, then that would be like them giving thanks to their God, you know. Verse 30. Then Joshua built on Mount Ebal an altar to the Lord, the God of Israel, as Moses, the servant of the Lord, had commanded the Israelites. He built it according to what is written in the book of the law of Moses, an altar of uncut stones on which no iron tool had been used. On it they offered to the Lord burnt offerings and sacrificed fellowship offerings. There, in the presence of the Israelites, Joshua wrote on stones a copy of the law of Moses. All the Israelites, with their elders, officials, and judges, were standing on both sides of the ark of the covenant of the Lord, facing the Levitical priests who carried it. Both the foreigners living among them and the native born were there. Half of the people stood in front of Mount Gerizim, and half of them in front of Mount Ebal, as Moses, the servant of the Lord, had formerly commanded them when he gave instructions to bless the people of Israel. Afterward, Joshua read all the words of the law, the blessings and the curses, just as it is written in the book of the law. There was not a word of all that Moses had commanded that Joshua did not read to the whole assembly of Israel, including the women and children and the foreigners who lived among them. All right, I understand that most people were illiterate at this time. I understand that, but people have short attention spans. Some of them shorter than others. Some of them have comparably long attention spans. Okay. But this is my area of expertise here, psychology. And, I mean, you're not going to get people to process what you're saying if you read like 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 hours. Not going to happen, you know. It's just something to think about. Like I said, I understand most people were illiterate in this day. It's nothing to be ashamed of. So, anyway, chapter 9. Now, when all the kings west of Jordan heard about these things, the kings in the hill country, in the western foothills, and along the entire coast of the Mediterranean Sea, as far as Lebanon, the kings of the Hittites, Amorites, Canaanites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites. Want to stop right there. I have no idea who the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites are. It could be that they were ethnic groups that were part of an empire like the Hittite Empire. Okay, um, but um, we know that the Hittites did not exist at the time this is purported to have been written. Um, do with that what you will. Verse 3. However, when the people of Gibeon heard what Joshua had done to Jericho and Ai, they resorted to a ruse. They went as a delegation whose donkeys were loaded with worn out sacks and old wineskins, cracked and mended. They put worn and patched sandals on their feet and wore old clothes. All the bread of their food supply was dry and moldy. Then they went to Joshua in the camp at Gilgal and said to him and the Israelites, "We have come from a distant country. Make a treaty with us." Verse 7. Then the Israelites said to the Hivites, hang on, wouldn't the people of Gideon be the Gibeonites? Just asking. No, I'm not saying that the Hittites did not exist when it was written. What I'm saying is the Hittites did not exist when this is purported to have been written. The Hittites did exist. No question about that. We have evidence. No question. So anyway, moving on, verse 7. The Israelites said to the Hivites, "But perhaps you live near us, so how can we make a treaty with you?" "We are your servants," they said to Joshua. But Joshua asked, "Who are you and where do you come from?" They answered, "Your servants have come from a very distant country because of the fame of the Lord your God. For we have heard reports of him, all that he did in Egypt, and all that he did to the two kings of the Amorites east of the Jordan, Sihon king of Heshbon, and Og king of Bashan, who reigned in Ashtaroth. And our elders and all those living in our country said to us, 'Take provisions for your journey, go and meet them, and say to them, We are your servants, make a treaty with us.'" Um, I just want to know why they didn't say what country they're from. I mean, couldn't they have come up with a better story? I mean, sure, Joshua might not have known the name of the country. And, I mean, let's face it, people in that time didn't really get too far out of whatever um, country they were in, but until the empire started. But yes, Noah, that's what I'm talking about. So, I mean, who's to say they didn't get their timeline a little bit screwed up? I mean, that's all I'm saying. I mean, maybe they thought the Hittites existed at the time. I don't know. I'm just pointing out things, okay? Um, verse 12. This bread of ours was warm when we packed it at home on the day we left to come to you. But now, see how dry and moldy it is. And these wineskins that we filled were new. But see how cracked they are. And our clothes and sandals are worn out by the very long journey. The Israelites sampled their provisions, but did not inquire of the Lord. Then Joshua made a treaty of peace with them to let them live, and the leaders of the assembly ratified it by oath. 3 days after they made the treaty with the Gibeonites. Okay. Noah, how about going down and commenting? We can chat in the comments. I don't mind. Okay. I'll talk with you. Um so yeah, I mean, they said Hivites. One of the previous verses said Hivites, but this verse says Gibeonites. So, like, the only thing I can think of that would unify this seeming mistake would be um, I live in Oregon, so I'm an Oregonian, but I'm also an American. So, so maybe Gibeon was part of the Hivites. I don't know. Uh, okay, so verse 16. 3 days after they made the treaty with the Gibeonites, the Israelites heard that they were neighbors living near them. So the Israelites set out, and on the third day came to their cities Gibeon, Kephirah, Beeroth, and Kiriath Jearim. My apologies for getting those wrong. But the Israelites did not attack them, because the leaders of the assembly had sworn an oath to them by the Lord, the God of Israel. The whole assembly grumbled against the leaders, but all the leaders answered, "We have given them our oath by the Lord, the God of Israel, and we cannot touch them now. This is what we will do to them. We will let them live, so that God's wrath will not fall on us for breaking the oath we swore to them." They continued, "Let them live, but let them be woodcutters and water carriers in the service of the whole assembly." So the leader's promise to them was kept. Okay. Verse 22. Um, no offense, but that sounds like slavery to me. Verse 22. Then Joshua summoned the Gibeonites and said, "Why did you deceive us by saying we live a long way from you? While actually you live near us? You are now under a curse. You will never be released from service as woodcutters and water carriers for the house of my God." They answered Joshua, Your servants were clearly told how the Lord your God had commanded his servant Moses to give you the whole land and to wipe out all its inhabitants from before you. And so we feared for our lives because of you, and that is why we did this. Perfectly reasonable. Why wouldn't they fear for their lives? Verse 25, we are now in your hands. Do to us what seems good and right to you. So Joshua saved them from the Israelites, and they did not kill them. That day he made the Gibeonites woodcutters and water carriers for the assembly to provide for the needs of the altar of the Lord at the place the Lord would choose. And that is what they are to this day. Chapter 10. Now Adoni-Zedek, king of Jerusalem, heard that Joshua had taken Ai and totally destroyed it, doing to Ai and its king what he had done to Jericho and its king, and that the people of Gibeon had made a treaty of peace with Israel and had become their allies. He and his people were very much alarmed at this, because Gibeon was an important city, like one of the royal cities. It was larger than Ai, and all its men were good fighters. So Adoni-Zedek, king of Jerusalem, appealed to Hoham, king of Hebron, Piram, king of Jarmuth, Japhia, king of Lachish, and Debir, king of Eglon. Okay, Randolph, have a good day. Then the 5 kings of the Amorites, the kings of Jerusalem, Hebron, Jarmuth, Lachish, and Eglon, joined forces. They moved up with all their troops and took up positions against Gibeon and attacked it. Verse 6, the Gibeonites then sent word to Joshua in the camp at Gilgal, do not abandon your servants. Come up to us quickly and save us. Help us, because all the Amorite kings from the hill country have joined forces against us. So Joshua marched up from Gilgal with his entire army, including all the best fighting men. The Lord said to Joshua, do not be afraid of them. I have given them into your hands. Not one will be able to withstand you. After an all-night march from Gilgal, Joshua took them by surprise. The Lord threw them into confusion before Israel. So Joshua and the Israelites defeated them completely at Gibeon. Israel pursued them along the road going up from Beth Horon and cut them down all the way to Azekah and Makkedah as they fled before Israel on the road down from Beth Horon to Azekah. The Lord hurled large hailstones down on them, and more of them died from the hail than were killed by the swords of the Israelites. Verse 12. This is the story of the sun standing still. Verse 12. On the day the Lord gave the Amorites over to Israel, Joshua said to the Lord in the presence of Israel, sun, stand still over Gibeon, and you, moon, over the valley of Ajalon. So the sun stood still, and the moon stopped, till the nation avenged itself on its enemies, as it is written in the book of Jasher. The sun stopped in the middle of the sky and delayed going down about a full day. Okay. This is impossible because the sun always stands still. It's a star. Well, you can get technical about that, but it's a star, whereas planets spin. So this is an impossibility because in order for the sun to stand still, the earth would have to stop. And that would make a huge difficulty for everything, not just people, but the oceans and everything else, because you have to think the earth just has to stop. So right now, the earth is moving at about 1,000 miles at the equator. Now, it would have been a little bit faster back in that day. Just a little bit, not too much, just a little bit. But still, the amount of force you need to stop the earth would throw everything out of whack, including throwing all the animals and the people off of the earth because the gravity is not strong enough to do that, to keep the animals and everything on the earth. The gravity would not be able to overcome that. Verse 14, there has never been a day like it before or since, a day when the Lord listened to a human being. Wait a minute. Didn't he listen to Moses when Moses said, don't destroy them, meaning the Israelites? Then Joshua returned with all Israel to the camp at Gilgal. Verse 16, now the 5 kings had fled and hidden in the cave at Makkedah. When Joshua was told that the 5 kings had been found hiding in the cave at Makkedah, he said, roll large rocks up to the mouth of the cave and post some men there to guard it. But don't stop. Pursue your enemies, attack them from the rear, and don't let them reach their cities, for the Lord your God has given them into your hand. So Joshua and the Israelites defeated them completely, but a few survivors managed to reach their fortified cities. The whole army then returned safely to Joshua in the camp at Makkedah, and no one uttered a word against the Israelites. Then Joshua said, open the mouth of the cave and bring those 5 kings out to me. So they brought the 5 kings out of the cave, the kings of Jerusalem, Hebron, Jarmuth, Lachish, and Eglon. When they had brought these kings to Joshua, he summoned all the men of Israel and said to the army commanders who had come with him, come here and put your feet on the necks of these kings. So they came forward and placed their feet on their necks. I'm not quite sure if that's a ritual that the Israelites had. It sounds like one, but I'm not sure. Joshua said to them, do not be afraid, do not be discouraged, be strong and courageous. This is what the Lord will do to all the enemies you're going to fight. Then Joshua put the kings to death and exposed their bodies on 5 poles, and they were left hanging on the poles until evening. At sunset, Joshua gave the order, and they took them down from the poles and threw them into the cave where they had been hiding. At the mouth of the cave, they placed large rocks, which are there to this day. That day, Joshua took Makkedah. He put the city and its king to the sword, totally destroyed everyone in it. He left no survivors. And he did to the king of Makkedah as he done to the king of Jericho. Then Joshua and all Israel with him moved from Makkedah to Libnah and attacked it. The Lord also gave that city and its king into Israel's hand. The city and everyone in it Joshua put to the sword. He left no survivors there. And he did to its king as he had done to the king of Jericho. Then Joshua and all Israel with him moved on from Libnah to Lachish. He took up positions against it and attacked it. The Lord gave Lachish into Israel's hands, and Joshua took it on the second day. The city and everyone in it he put to the sword, just as he had done to Libnah. Meanwhile, Horam, king of Gezer, had come up to help Lachish, but Joshua defeated him and his army until no survivors were left. Then Joshua and all Israel with him moved on from Lachish to Eglon. They took up positions against it and attacked it. They captured it that same day and put it to the sword and totally destroyed everyone in it, just as they had done to Lachish. Okay, so I just have a question. Wouldn't Israel be awfully tired by this time? I mean, they're coming up against fresh armies, and Israel's just one army. Um, verse 38. Then Joshua and all Israel with him turned around and attacked Debir. They took the city, its king, and its villages, and put them to the sword. Everyone in it they totally destroyed. They left no survivors. They did to Debir and its king as they did to Libnah and its king and to Hebron. So Joshua subdued the whole region, including the hill country, the Negev, the western foothills, and the mountain slopes. Together with all their kings, he left no survivors. He totally destroyed all who breathed, just as the Lord, the God of Israel, had commanded. Joshua subdued them from Kadesh Barnea to Gaza, from the whole region of Goshen to Gibeon. All these kings and their lands Joshua conquered in one campaign, because the Lord, the God of Israel, fought for Israel. Then Joshua returned with Israel to the camp at Gilgal. Chapter 11. And this is the last chapter for today. When Jabin, king of Hazor, heard of this, he sent word to Jobab, king of Madon. And I just want to stop here and let you know that J did not exist during this time. In fact, I don't think J even existed in the English language until sometime in the Middle Ages. So when you hear me say a J word, like a J name, um, it's really more of a Y sound than a J sound. Just to let you know that, in case you didn't. Um, when Jabin, king of Hazor, heard of this, he sent word to Jobab, king of Madon, to the kings of Shimron and Akshaph, and to the northern kings who were in the mountains in the Arabah south of Kinnereth, in the western foothills, and in Navath Dor on the west, to the Canaanites in the east and west, to the Amorites, Hittites, Perizzites, and Jebusites in the hill country, and to the Hivites below Hermon in the region of Mizpah. They came out with all their troops and a large number of horses and chariots, a huge army as numerous as the sand on the seashore. All these kings joined forces and made camp together at the waters of Merom to fight against Israel. The Lord said to Joshua, "Do not be afraid of them, because by this time tomorrow I will hand all of them slain over to Israel. You are to hamstring their horses and burn their chariots." Not quite sure what hamstring means. I mean, is he farmers might know this stuff. I'm not a farmer. Uh, are they? Is he talking about stringing them up by their legs? Because hamstrings are in the legs. That's the only thing I can think of. Verse 9, Joshua did to them as the Lord directed. He hamstrung their horses and burned their chariots. At that time, Joshua turned back and captured Hazor and put its king to the sword. Hazor had been the head of all these kingdoms. Everyone in it they put to the sword. They totally destroyed them, not sparing anyone that breathed, and he burned Hazor itself. Joshua took all these royal cities and their kings and put them to the sword. He totally destroyed them, as Moses, the servant of the Lord, commanded. Yet Israel did not burn any of the cities built on their mounds, except Hazor, which Joshua burned. Huh. I wonder what that's all about. Why they burn nothing, no city but Hazor. Doesn't make any sense. Verse 14. The Israelites carried off for themselves all the plunder and livestock of these cities, but all the people they put to the sword until they completely destroyed them, not sparing anyone that breathed. Why would God kill the babies? I mean, even the children, they're innocent. They haven't done anything. As the Lord commanded his servant Moses, so Moses commanded Joshua, and Joshua did it. He left nothing undone of all that the Lord commanded Moses. So Joshua took this entire land, the hill country, all the Negev, the whole region of Goshen, the western foothills, the Arabah, and the mountains of Israel with their foothills, from Mount Halak, which rises towards Seir, to Baal Gad in the valley of Lebanon below Mount Hermon. He captured all their kings and put them to death. Joshua waged war against all these kings for a long time, except for the Hivites living in Gibeon. Not one city made a treaty of peace with the Israelites, who took them all in battle. For it was the Lord himself who hardened their hearts to wage war against Israel, so that he might destroy them totally, exterminating them without mercy, as the Lord had commanded Moses. Okay, so like I said, with, Pharaoh, when we're talking about when the Israelites are totally back in Egypt, and Moses is there saying, God said, let my people go. And Pharaoh at first is going to let him go. It says that. Clear as day. It says Pharaoh is going to let him go. But then, for some reason, God decides that he's going to harden Pharaoh's heart. How does this make any sense? Thank you, Nevermore. I mean, it's one thing. Okay. If someone wants to punish someone else for being hard headed of their own volition, that's fine. I mean, there's a lot of caveats to that, but sure, whatever. But honestly, why are you going to punish people for being hard headed when you're the one who makes them hard headed to begin with? At that verse 21, at that time Joshua went and destroyed the Anakites from the hill country, from Hebron, Debir, and Anab, from all the hill country of Judah, and from all the hill country of Israel. Joshua totally destroyed them in their towns. No Anakites were left in Israelite territory. Only in Gaza, Gath, and Ashdod did any survive. So Joshua took up the entire land just as the Lord had directed Moses, and he gave it as an inheritance to Israel according to their tribal divisions. Then the land had rest from war. Okay, so that's the end of chapter 11, and that's the end of our reading for today. And before I go, I wanted to say again to my mods, I don't care if people disagree with me. Everyone's welcome here. Disagreements are going to happen. I don't care if people disagree with me. What I do care about are people giving like slurs. That is not allowed at all. And I also want to say, while I'm on this topic, if you get banned from my channel, I am not going to be like the raging atheist. I am not going to go through and unban you for a time until you screw up again. Not going to do that. If you get banned from my channel, you're banned. Period. I'm sorry, Lisa. I would say unsubscribe and then subscribe again, but since you're a member, I think it would mess up your membership, so I don't really know what to tell you on that one. I have heard that YouTube's being a bit screwy on notifications, so I don't really know what to tell you. Okay, so Noah, you comment in the comment section. I don't, obviously I speak to you all the time. Okay. And so I really want to learn what this stuff is about from the Jewish perspective, because I was never Jewish. This is my thing against the Christian position and the Christian interpretation, and it has nothing to do with the Jewish position. So, well, thank you, Noah. And like I've promised you, I'm not going to call God a you know what anymore. So, anyway, um, so I appreciate you being here. Um, most of my people are respectful because most of them are atheists. I went too fast. Oh, I'm sorry. I have trouble with going too slow or going too fast. Um, I can't seem to get a middle pace, you know. Um, yeah, but Lisa, well, he doesn't mind that. He doesn't mind that at all. He knows I'm an atheist. He knows this is an atheist channel. So, he doesn't mind that at all. Um, anyway, I'm going to go. It is hotter than HE double hockey sticks here. And I even have my air on and it's still hot. So I'm going to go. Can you, Noah, can you elaborate on that a little? I'm more than happy to answer your question. I'm just not quite sure what your question is. Uh, yeah, yes, Noah, this is what Saturday live stream is about. Did you have a problem with something I said? Or, you know, I don't have a problem learning, you know. I mean, it's not that. Okay. All right. Alrighty. Um so I guess I will see you guys tomorrow for Atheist Church. And you know, I will see you guys later. So you have a nice day and have fun. Which part of his writing again, Noah? I'm not too good with chapters. Would that be chapter 10? I'm pretty good with knowing like subjects, but I'm not very good knowing what chapter they fall into. Would that be in the chapter of Achan's sin? I'm looking for it. No, I'm looking for it. I think this is what you're talking about, Noah. Um, 8, chapter 8, verse 30. Then Joshua built on Mount Ebal, an altar to the Lord, the God of Israel, as Moses, the servant of the Lord, had commanded the Israelites. He built it according to what is written in the book of the law of Moses, an altar of uncut stones on which no iron tool had been used. Is that well, if they contain the law, they would have to be pretty big. You know what? I would love to have you on my channel, so we can discuss things. Uh, I don't know. Size of a man, maybe. I'm guessing the 600 and something, not just the 10 that Christians talk about all the time, but the 600 and something laws that actually make up the law of Moses. Is that correct? Well, sorry. I would say big enough for the 660 or 600 whatever that make up like the entire law, not just the 10 commandments. Is that what you're asking? Because I know there's more than just the 10 commandments. There's, I believe, 600 plus laws in the law of Moses. Okay. All right. How many do you feel are there? So how many do you count, Noah? I'm asking, not putting you on a spot or anything. I'm just asking. Excuse me. Uh, so anyway, I just, whoa, man, it's hot. So you think they're just 10 commandments? What about like everything else? Like, the burnt offerings and the fellowship offerings and the all that. I guess I just don't understand. Okay, Noah. Well, you know, this is an interesting conversation and we can talk about it in the comments. How about that? I really have to go. I am roasting. Sorry, guys. You have a nice night. Bye.